Prince holds a sword, his enemy in sight. He parries a strike from a crow, leaps forward into a pirouette. He dances through years, waiting for his next role in the story. As he waits, his mind wonders, who am I anyways? In classic fairy tales, princes were not always the main character of the story. In fact, they were usually endgame characters. What I mean by that is that often the princes would reward our main heroine, usually a good-hearted and obedient girl, with protection and marriage. These kind of characters are portrayed in very early Disney princess movies, such as Snow White and Cinderella. The princes were cute and they had money, but not much else was there besides a kind of vague charm, adventure, boy things of that time period. But their roots are in very old fairy tales, Brother Grimm and older fairy tales. Stories that were usually written to teach morals and explain history. If you listen to the voice in the well and are humble and kind, then you will have a happy and good life. These princes did not possess much personality beyond noble, strong, good. They were not meant to be complex characters, but rather their personalities could be drawn from what people of the time expected an ideal prince to be. Now there are several modern-day stories that have had a lot of fun reworking and playing with the fairy tale tropes. We rebuild tropes, then delight in twisting and turning them. From books, to games, to movies, to shows, to our own OCs and fanfictions. Creators of Princess Tutu, a beloved anime from 2003, did much of the same. This video will be a part 1 of analyzing Prince Mytho from the amazing series Princess Tutu. I suggest that you either go watch the series first, or at the very least, the first 4 episodes that this part will be talking about. If you do not mind spoilers, then feel free to stay. I'm not going to judge you. You're fine. But just know that you have been warned as far as spoilers go. Now let's begin. Mytho is a prince from a fairy tale who now exists in a town made up of a mix of reality and stories. We are told in the first episode that he sealed away a massive evil raven by shattering his own heart into pieces. How is he alive after shattering his own heart, you ask? Well, we may or may not find out. I do not remember. In the first episode, we see that Mytho has no smile, he has no emotions, but for some reason, he does not always do what he is told. 2 characters seek to control him. Their names are Rue and Fakir. Rue is in love with Mytho and is content to command him to stay by her side. Fakir, on the other hand, seems incredibly controlling and comes off as downright abusive at times. At this point, Mytho cannot return either of their feelings, and Fakir's kind of hinted at anyways. Mytho doesn't quite empathize with them. He only seems to stay with them because of his exposure to them and logically knowing them. In the presence of whomever he is around, Mytho will obey and repeat what they want to hear, but when he is left alone, he almost always goes off to do his own thing. For example, when he is with Fakir, he is told, "Stay put," and he'll say, "Okay." With Rue, she'll say you love me," and the prince will respond, "I love you." But despite verbally saying whatever he is told to, and doing what he's told while his commander's in front of him, Mytho will still somehow go to do his own thing. Our first example of this is when Mytho goes off to dance on his own. Something in him drives him to dance. This will be important later. The second example is when Mytho jumps out of a window to save a baby chick who is attacked by a raven. In both of these instances, Fakir had tried to tell Mytho to stay in his room. So how is Mytho disobeying? Personally, my theory is that Mytho still has a drive within him to protect others. It is what he bases his identity on and what his original character was based on from within his story. A prince meant to protect others and defeat the evil raven. So even without emotions to enjoy the reward of joy or praise, he still will carry out actions that make up his core and that he himself has based his identity as a character on. Still, beyond this, he really doesn't care about anything around him, well, emotionally. Words are just words. Because of this, we encounter our first heart shard in the form of a giant anteater. Yes, a giant anteater. Her name is Anteaterina. Anteaterina insists that Mytho go out with her instead of Root. Now this is when we first see Princess Tutu appear, and the plot gets started, and blah 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 blah, things that don't have to do directly with Mytho, so we're skipping it happen. So go and watch the episode if you're curious about the giant anteater named Anteaterina. Anyways, the anteater ballerina was acting up because she had a piece of Mytho's heart, in the form of what is called a heart shard. This heart shard is the emotion of bitter disappointment. Princess Tutu, another character from Mytho's story, returns the heart shard to him. It's a negative emotion, and it appears to hurt the prince as he receives it. But, despite this, he thanks Princess Tutu for returning it to him. Just a note, when I was younger, I thought it was the emotion of envy. For some reason, my brain just made that assumption because the anteater ballerina is envious of Rue and thus takes Prince Mytho from her. She doesn't really care about Prince Mytho, so just mentioning that. But, the dub and the sub both say bitter disappointment, so here we are. We watch as the emotion is received and growing within his heart, and Mytho is forced to feel his feelings, and it is painful for our prince. Each episode after this is kind of like a monster of the week, but it's a heart shard of the week. Princess Tutu, sometimes aided by others, dances the heart shards out of the infected host and returns them to the prince. We'll talk about some of the episodes, but mostly my analysis will be focusing on theories behind the shards and the changes in Mytho as he receives them. The second heart shard is when Mytho goes off with his new friend Duck, and they get swept into a restaurant where the cook makes them a buffet of cold, gross food. Well, the food looks delicious, but it's pretty bad. Duck sneaks around and sees the cook slicing chunks of meat with a huge butcher's knife. Then she looks into the back and sees a grave. But when she runs back to Mytho to warn him of the oddities, he just doesn't seem to care, which, is to be expected. I thought this part was interesting because while Duck is clearly worried, Prince Mytho doesn't seem concerned at all. While this makes sense with him doing what he's told while in the presence of others, he also still does have a drive to protect those around him to the point of his own peril. My personal theory for why he isn't going into protection mode is that, 1, he knows that they aren't really in danger of anything but an upset stomach, and 2, if the cook does come out to chop them up, he has one skill as a prince, and that is with a sword. So, more plot happens, Mytho receives his second heart shard. This one is the feeling of loneliness, another negative emotion. When he receives it, suddenly we begin to see the prince understanding others beyond their immediate safety. He always understood commands, but now he can understand their emotions and possible needs as far as the emotions he has recollected. Personally, I think that the series does not show this effect taking place enough. I think they could have done more, but the series also has so much going on that I do understand why examples of this are a bit limited. I just really want more Princess Tutu. Anyways, in episode 4, Mytho thinks about himself. This is new. Instead of only answering questions, he starts to make his own statements. Before, when Duck would say, "Well, you really love Rue," and Mytho would respond with something like, "I don't know." He now tells Rue that he does love her, but for some reason, he still feels lonely when he is with her. Poor Rue. Well, hearing this really freaks Rue out because something has changed in the prince. When he has been the same for as long as she has known him, and that has been years. Mytho feels pulled towards someone else's loneliness. He goes and finds an actual ghost. Yes, a ghost. The ghost of a woman whose story was never completed. And thus she is stuck forever waiting for her love. Yes, ghosts can be possessed by heart shards, maybe because they're also characters from stories? So, one of my favorite things about this episode is that the ghost and Rue have a dance battle for Mytho. Rue is trying to protect Mytho by preventing him from being pulled into a ghost realm. I really feel like this is a genuinely sweet moment, despite Rue's affection and love for Mytho being a bit selfish and flawed. There's a reason for her love being selfish and flawed that we'll get into later, but even if in that toxic state, Rue does have a protectiveness and a want for Mytho to be safe, where she will actively fight others and do her best to the point of exhaustion to try to protect him. So when Princess Tutu resolves things, as she does, Mytho receives his third heart shard. This one is the Shard of Sorrow. There have been 4 episodes at this point, with 3 heart shards returned to our dear prince. All of them have been negative emotions. While Mytho has begun to sympathize with others, he has also been experiencing pain with each shard that has been returned to him. He has been forced to face disappointment, loneliness, and sorrow after years of feeling nothing. In the literal sense of the story, he will have to face whether or not he wants to continue to grow his heart. The experience has not been great so far. But at the same time, as I watched the series, this gave me a connection to our real-life human experience. In real life, when we go through a trauma or hardship, often we will put away our emotions and deal with the issue later. After all, we need to deal with the issue before we can start to feel, otherwise it won't get better. After we have dealt with the issue and we get to a safe place, those emotions still exist and they come back. They don't just leave us and disappear. While I doubt the authors intended this connection, I think that it's a really neat thing to think about. After all, Mytho faced his greatest enemy, took care of business to protect everyone to the best of his ability, and now he finally has time to process and heal. Princess Tutu is returning emotions one at a time, and while the threat of the raven isn't necessarily gone, they all have time to breathe as they go through the emotions one by one. The prince has an ally in Princess Tutu, where she wants him to heal and change. Meanwhile, Rue and Fakir, having their own issues for their own reasons, were content with the more obedient Mytho, who was the most basic of a fairy tale prince archetype. Maybe that's a good comparison. Maybe it's a reach? Well, it's what I thought of. Those are the first 3 heart shards, and next time we'll go over the next 3, or however many make sense. Thank you so much for watching. Please share the video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want more content like it. This was my first video of this kind, so thank you so much for watching. Comment your thoughts below, And when you first watched Princess Tutu? And what do you think of Prince Mytho? And will you marry me? I'm just joking. Don't take that seriously. If you are watching this without knowing the full story, I would really suggest not scrolling down just yet into the comments, just in case there's spoilers. But if you don't really care about spoilers, once again, I'm not going to judge you. You're fine. So thank you so much, and goodbye.